So this is my breakdown for the Dream Sequence Challenge hosted by Pwnisher on YouTube. For this challenge I was heavily inspired by the TV show Shogun. As you can see, I've got a lot of reference images from the actual show. The set design and costumes are so detailed in the show, I really wanted to capture that in my animation. So basically the whole point of this challenge was to animate a visualizer to the BPM that they gave us, which was 120 BPM. I started by making a block out of the scene, just using primitive shapes and getting the camera sorted out. The camera had to move on the beat, so I focused on that first, before I made the actual animation. I got some front and side profile views of Hiroyuki Sanada, who played Yoshi Toranaga in Shōgun. I used the FaceGen Demo, and basically you can place points on key features of the face and it generates a 3D mesh. Sometimes it looks like absolute garbage and other times it works out pretty good. You can also do slight adjustments like moving the facial features around if you don't like how it looks. Then you can import it into Dash 3D and use a slider to morph it into your character. So then I imported the textures and I forgot there's a giant watermark on the forehead. So I had to remove that in Affinity. Then I just sculpted fine details in Blender, and obviously no one's ever going to see this because the camera's so far away. Here's the final base mesh. Then I separated parts of the mesh that I wanted hair to be on and added a hair modifier to them. Boom, it looks pretty darn good. Here's the setup I used to make the hair shader and add grey hairs. I basically just used the curves info node to randomize where some hairs are grey and some are not. Then I just animated the character meditating and nodding their head to the beat. Here's one of the test renders where I just got the animation and timing down. And here's a version 2 where I just changed the layout of the garden to make it more centralized on the character. Then I used Marvelous Designer to design the clothes by using references from Shogun and references of sewing patterns to make each piece. Okay, now let me simulate the clothes, and it's garbage. So I think the model was moving too fast for the simulation. So instead I just made the character stationary and animated wind to simulate the character moving. Then I just UV unwrapped it and imported it into Blender. And then I textured it in Blender and it looks pretty darn good. And here's the texture setup. Top 10 things no one will ever see because the camera's so far away. Then I animated these roof blocks using constraints and an empty, and when the empty comes near, it pushes the blocks down. Top 10 things no one will ever see because the camera's so far away. Then I just animated the tatami mats to move on the beat and snap in place. Top 10 things no one will ever see because the camera's so far away. Then I got this public domain image of folding doors and edited out the lines so that I could use them for the screen doors. Top 10 things no one will ever see. interior done. Then for the exterior, I basically went to Sketchfab, CG Trader, Turbo Squid, and just got random assets that would fit my scene. And then basically I split those models into pieces, which I could use to reconstruct my own house. So here's the finished house exterior. And I just put these pieces, boom, 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 just put it together. It looks cool. Then for the LED shoji screens, I basically just treated each panel as its own pixel and animated a pixel art type of thing. I feel like I could have made this animation for the doors a bit better and more interesting, but I didn't really have enough time. Then I just use these planes that don't cast any shadows and they have transparency so that only the lights show up. And then that was the exterior of the house complete. Then for the Zen Garden, I wanted to do something different and use cymatics to animate the sand. So I found this geometry node set up by this channel, which looks really amazing. But then when I tried doing it, it looked like absolute garbage. And looking back, I probably shouldn't have added this effect because it actually added too much visual clutter to the final animation. Then I painted each wave in the Zen Garden like a crazy person, but it was actually quite relaxing. And then I just animated these stepping stones to rise up out of the ground on the beat. I used the same technique where I just kit bashed a whole bunch of garden assets and foliage. Then after a while, this is what I came up with for the garden. Then for the moss, I actually did such a weird technique, but it ended up working. I basically just used this weird blob shape and scattered it around like hair on the moss. And then in the material, I just randomized the color. And then I used the alpha and transmission values to make it look more like moss. And I think it looks pretty good from far. Top 10 things we see because the camera's so far away. Then I just took the whole scene and used this instance to scene feature to make the scene loop perfectly. So here's the final lighting for the character. I just basically used 2 area lights. And then for the interior, the lighting was a bit more complicated. I used spotlights and area lights to highlight certain features. And then it was the same story for the garden. I just highlighted certain bushes, trees, rocks, just so it stood out from the background. Ooh, and now it's the final reveal of the thing. And here's the final thing that I made. So here's my final scene. You know, overall I'm pretty happy with how the scene turned out, but I feel like I could have done some things a lot better. I feel like there was too much visual noise in the animation, so it came out looking too cluttered. I feel like I also could have made the camera motion more interesting and dynamic, but overall I'm actually just happy that I finished the animation on time and got to submit. But next time it would be cool if I actually just focused in on individual elements and did close-ups instead of a wide shot like this. I definitely want to do a video where I remake this animation knowing everything that I know afterwards. So if you're interested in seeing that, consider subscribing so you don't miss it. Recording. Like and subscribe.